Hey everyone, it's Jason with AER Equipment and Repair. I want to welcome you to the very first episode of the AER Podcast. I'm super excited that this is happening finally. I've been working on this for a while, and I really hope you guys enjoy listening to this. I've had a good time putting it together, and it's been a little nerve-wracking, but we're here, and we're launching this thing, whether it's ready or not. On this first episode, you'll hear a interview that I did with Frank Peterson, who's the director of sales for specialty coating products. And he kind of just takes us through his journey through the industrial coatings world, how he ended up in the coatings industry, his time with Carboline, and then branching off into his own new business as the owner of Specialty Coating Products. And throughout this series, you're going to hear from people like Frank. You're going to hear from manufacturer reps from big brands like Graco, Bullard, Schultz, Carboline, as well as contractors that are out there using the equipment every day, like many of you that are listening to this podcast are. I hope you guys enjoy what you listen to. If you do, please hit the subscribe button and listen to us every month. We're going to do one of these a month for as long as we can. And if people enjoy it, we'll keep making them. Before we get started, I have to plug our company, so I'm going to read a little bit of an advertisement here. For all your equipment needs, look no further than AER Equipment and Repair. We are a leading distributor as well as repair and warranty center for major brands such as Graco, PMC, DeVilbiss, and Klemco. Shop online today at aer-equipment.com and use promo code AERPOD, that's AERPOD at checkout for 10% off your first order. Keep in mind that all orders online of $50 or more have free ground shipping. That's aer-equipment.com. And now, without further ado, I give you the launch of the AER Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm here with Frank Peterson, Director of Sales for Specialty Coating Products. What's going on, Frank?
Hey Jason, thanks for coming.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate you joining me and helping me launch this podcast. I've been working on it for a while, and I can't believe the day's here. It's pretty exciting.
It is, man. It's I'm excited to be a part of it, and that you would choose SCP to be your first guest. And I've never done a podcast, but one of the companies we represent, Carboline, the main company we represent, Carboline, does a podcast, and it's really, as it's come out, there's a lot of excitement at Carboline, and it's been received really well. And there's a lot of enthusiasm within the Carboline organization, and that's the one example I know of a podcast. But it's pretty cool seeing it kind of catch fire and start doing its thing. So yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So if we want to dive right into it, so you title yourself the Director of Sales, but when it comes down to brass tacks, you're the owner of Specialty Coating Products. And I kind of wanted to touch base on that because how old is Specialty Coating Products right now?
We went live October 1st, 2017.
2017. Yeah. So going on 2 years now.
Yeah, that's right.
So my main question on that is, how long were you with Carboline?
So had I stayed with Carboline this coming June, it would have been my 20-year anniversary. So you built up quite a reputation over that time, and you were a top-grossing salesman from what I remember. Yeah.
What made you want to venture off into this, sole proprietorship or entrepreneurship?
It's a great question, and one I'm excited to answer and just to provide some feedback on. And really, if I think back, you don't even really know this, but back in 2007 is when I actually filed the LLC for what our kind of parent company is called Peterson Specialties. And then Specialty Coating Products was filed as a DBA under that name. And but that happened back in 2007. And Butch Pinnell actually had a little bit to do with that because I met Butch at a customer location probably 2005 or 2006.
Oh, real quick. For
Yeah.
those of y'all that don't know who Butch is the one of the owners of AER Equipment and Repair.
So
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny thinking back to it. But he was at Forum SPD at the time, and they've now transferred their business to Houston. But he was on the floor there identifying spray capabilities that could enhance application things that could enhance their process at Forum. And he and I became fast friends. And, within the next couple of years, I had an idea of bringing more products, representing more products, really to provide the Carboline customer base a greater level of service. That was the whole idea, is if I could have more products, then there was a bit of a larger business. And if you kind of think about why do companies hire sales reps, it's because they have enough business to justify paying somebody a salary to represent their product line. But if you don't have enough revenue generation to pay a sales guy, then you hire an agency to represent your product, and maybe they represent your product along with a handful of other products, and that generates enough of an income for a agency to exist or for a salesperson for that agency to have enough products to sell. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so when I saw Butch and met Butch, I thought, wow, I'm doing a good bit of business with Carboline, but I either have to have a larger geography and have more customers that I can go to, or have a smaller geography with more products. It's it's half dozen one way, six the other, right?
Right.
So anyway, I put a plan together at the time that wasn't as dynamic as a plan as what happened a year and a half ago, but went to Carboline and said, hey, I'd really like to go and create an agency and sell your products along with AER Equipment's products. And Carboline at that time said, Frank, we can't get behind this. We don't want to set a precedent for our sales reps to leave our company and start selling other stuff. So, but you fast forward 10 years, and what's really happened in the marketplace is the demand for industrial coatings has gone up, but the demand and the need for them to be in the location where they're being applied has gone up as well. And so it was kind of Carboline's executive management team was changing, and at the same time, the market was demanding local distribution. And so those two things were converging, and it was just an opportune time for me to go to Carboline and say, look, I think we can grow your business better, Carboline, if I had the opportunity to have local distribution, couple the Carboline line of products with complementary lines of product, and deliver the customer a comprehensive package of coatings and ancillary equipment to apply it, prepare the surface, etc. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the concept and how it happened. And then help lead me to another question that I can, so I don't get off too off track for you.
So yeah, the whole basis behind the company was to service your customer base here, but not pigeonhole them into just one company to buy from, right? And then also to have a place that has it local distribution.
Absolutely. More of the latter, because I didn't want to become a distributor that would be like, we can provide you any kind of paint you want. That wasn't really the idea. It was, because I have a great affection for Carboline. I worked for them for a long time. I kind of see them as my primary investor in specialty coating products. And when I went to them and said, look, if you allow me to separate from you, continue my relationship with you as one of representative and of distributor, that's a bit of a big ask from an employee to a manufacturer. But if you can promise and commit to the manufacturer that you have this great relationship with, that this is going to be better for you, I'm going to grow your business by you allowing me to separate from you, become a distributor for you, so I'll have local product, but I'm also going to continue to grow your direct sales too. It really becomes a win-win. Mm-hmm. But of course, the benefit for the customer was not so much the opportunity not at all the opportunity to diversify their paint desire, to give them Carboline and brand X and brand Y as well, but really to say, look, we can sell you Carboline, but we can also provide you anything you need to prepare the surface, anything you need to apply paint. And that's where Air Equipment comes into that equation too. It's like we can work in a partnership where I'm representing your line of products and delivering that to customers that maybe you don't have that have bought Carboline for a long time. And it's a win-win for Carboline because you're walking me into some opportunities where maybe Carboline's competitors in the door, but we're able to bring Carboline to them. So,
right.
Yeah.
And so what he's talking about is after SCP became a company, Air Equipment actually has a Carboline warehouse that we share that Frank sells out of. So that's kind of what he's talking about with the warehouse. And now walk me down that process. How long of a process was that to get that?
Yeah.
And then just how did you go about getting the warehouse up and going?
Well, one of the first things I'll say about that is that if you have been a salesperson in really any industry and you don't ever touch your product, one has a lot to learn about what having product physically in one's eyesight or in one's possession is. And what I mean by that is running a warehouse and physically having the stuff on the floor is a whole new deal. And so when you ask how did we initiate this relationship with Air Equipment, the first thought was we were going to put our paint buckets upstairs. And if anybody's ever been to Air Equipment that's listening to the podcast, you don't want to go upstairs in the back storage room, have to climb up the stairs and then go pull buckets from there. It's hot. The roof is, the ceiling height is like maybe 8 feet. So, and I didn't have any idea of why that was important. But Air Equipment also has the storage room next door, the overflow warehouse, and that became the ideal spot to have our 3 rows, 20 to 25 pallet spaces of our product. So I think it was good fortune, for lack of a better word. Maybe the owners of Air Equipment and Jason, maybe you yourself and the warehouse team, knowing that, or kind of having an inkling that putting the liquid in the overflow warehouse is a lot better than storing it upstairs. So
easily.
So
yeah.
We figured that part out, and then it's really we've all kind of learned. I think you share that sentiment as we've gone through this process. We've been housing Carboline paint in the Air Equipment warehouse, in the overflow warehouse, since January of 2018. So SCP started in October. For the first few months, we didn't have inventory. We started in January, and we've really evolved from there. We've now got, some shelf space, some pallet space, and I think we moved about 12,000 gallons through the warehouse last year with 25 pallets. So I think it's quite remarkable.
That's pretty impressive, yeah.
Ask me something else so I can keep the callers focused and directing them towards the story.
So I just kind of wanted to touch on that. But going further, so SCP has been around it'll be going on 2 years in October, right?
Right.
What kind of hurdles have you noticed that you've had to learn? Because, going from an employee from a huge company to the owner of your own small business, it's got to be a big transition for you, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be a learning curve there. What kind of, I guess, hurdles have you had to jump, and what have you learned in this first year and a half of business on your own?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think, and the president of Carboline, his name's Chris Tierney, he asked me the same question last summer, like, what has been the hardest thing, Frank, or what's been the most unexpected thing that you've had since you've started this thing? And I think it's somewhere lies in this idea of having to wear quite a few different hats and trying to wear each of those hats well. At the end of the day, we are a sales organization. Excuse me. That's what we do. We're trying to deliver our product as expeditiously and as competitively to the marketplace as we possibly can. And so that's not a lot different than the concept at Carboline. That's what they're trying to do. That's what Air Equipment's trying to do. Whatever you do, trying to do it the best you can at the most competitive rate and get it to the customer. And so, but I think the real difference between what I'm doing now as the owner or president of a small organization, if you will, I'm also wearing that director of sales hat because I represent the main part of the sales effort for the business. And it's kind of trying to find the marriage between doing all the admin stuff that it takes to run a small business, from HR and paying the bills and managing healthcare and rent on space, buildings, correspondences with our principals that we represent, and then actually selling and being with the customers. And my passion is really kind of doing what we're doing right now. Not really the podcast, but just sitting with one individual, really understanding what it is they want, what their needs are, and trying to respond to that. Mm-hmm. And on a personal level, it's really fulfilling to me to just understand, like, the podcast is exciting for me because it's exciting for you, mm-hmm. right? And I'm jazzed on your excitement, and I want to be able to deliver because you want it, but not just because you want it, because I'm excited about it because you are. And I think that selling is kind of that way too. And it's like you go and you develop these relationships with your customers, and they all go home at the end of the day to their husbands, wives, kids, whatever it is they go home to. And you want just one's living experience to be good. And part of each of our living experiences is enjoying what we do and our professional life functioning well. And so that's really my passion. That's selling. That's being a salesperson. And so the hardest part of running the SCP organization is allocating the right time to being able to really do that. That's a pretty long-winded answer.
Okay,
but I think
that's a good answer.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to kind of, how did you end up with Carboline originally? Like, I mean, was it your first job at a college, or what? Was there just take me down that, because I always feel like being in this industry, everybody's got a story of how they got into it, because you don't go to college saying, hey, I want to work for Carboline, or hey, I want to work for AER Equipment. You end up in this industry because something happened along your career that brought you to this industry. You know what I mean? So how did you end up in the coatings industry originally?
And that's a cool story too. I mean, when I kind of look back at my professional life, it's like really just abound with a lot of blessings, and being at the right place at the right time and trying my best to just make the next right decision. So I went to I'll try to be kind of brief, but succinct at the same time. So I went to
It's okay, Frank. We're not on a time crunch.
Okay. So I went to a small liberal arts college in Dallas called University of Dallas, and it's a Catholic college too. But I felt privileged to go there more for the education and the liberal arts aspect of it. And when I got out, I moved back to my hometown, Corpus Christi, and I didn't have a plan on really what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be when I grew up, if you will. But I attended bar, and I'd always worked in the restaurant industry and had great success in that industry. And I think two things kind of converged at the same time when I got out of college. A guy who came into the bar that I worked at worked for a company called Briner Paints. And he saw kind of me behind the bar and thought, hey, this guy might be a good sales guy. And kind of coincidentally at the same time, there was a guy from my church in Corpus Christi who kind of felt a calling to work with young people out of college and help them kind of find their way in the professional world. And so I met with him. His name was Paul Adadio, and he had a list of people that in the Corpus Christi area that he suggested people like myself pursue and meet with, just to kind of practice the interview process and to practice putting yourself out there. So coincidentally, the guy who I just met at the bar was the number one guy on the list. His name was Charlie Swanson, and he worked for this company, Briner Paint. So Briner Paint was a small manufacturer of paint. And if you go back to the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned that agencies exist or manufacturers need agents whenever manufacturers aren't large enough to justify the cost of a salesperson. Mm-hmm. Briner Paint was that kind of company. They wanted a sales rep in the Austin, Texas area, but they didn't have enough business in Austin to justify a rep. So they actually had an agent represent them called Shandell Company that was an agency not unlike SCP that was in Houston at the time. And Shandell represented Plasite Coatings, Briner Paints, among other manufacturers. So one thing led to another, and I was able to be requested to work for them, offered a job in Austin. I moved to Austin, and that was in 1998. So I'd been out of college for a year, and in August of 1998, I went to work for the Chandel Company in Austin, Texas. Well, after working for Chandel about 10 months, Briner Paint was purchased by RPM, which is Carboline's parent company, and RPM decided that Briner Paint there was some technology that they wanted to keep, but they ultimately decided to close Briner's doors. And so when that happened, the Briner products that were retained, and they're in the Thermaline line at Carboline now, so the Thermaline products that are the high heat product line came from Briner Paint. So those were folded into Carboline, and at that time, it was just a great chance that Carboline did not have a rep in Austin, and I was offered the position then. And so I lived in Austin for a couple of years and had been really working to sell the previous 10 months to a year, but it hadn't had a lot of success. It was more of a marketing job because Briner Paint did not have a presence really in the market space. But Carboline was a more widely known name. So when I came onto the Carboline side, selling got a lot easier all of a sudden. So I'd already established a lot of context in the marketplace over that first 10 months, but I wasn't really, there was no exchange. There was no, we need an order for 20 gallons of 134 HG. So once again, I had that chance to be in the market space and calling on people and getting to know them, but I didn't have to go through the process of the demands and the delivery demands that we all know about when you're actually getting orders. It's like the first part is selling it and then it's delivering it. So a year later, which was 2000, I moved to San Antonio by choice. The account spread was greater in San Antonio, and I've been here ever since. So, yeah,
awesome.
That's it. That's the story. Quickly, yeah.
See, like I said, everybody just kind of stumbles upon not stumbles, but you know what I mean. You weren't graduate. What was your degree in college?
Philosophy.
Exactly. See.
Yeah.
No one, I don't know. I just found that out over being in this industry for 10 years that no one just, unless you're family or something.
Yeah.
But no one just says, hey, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to go into the coatings industry and make a career out of it.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that everybody I've talked to that stumbled in this career has a really good career and loves it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in these, you're going on 20 years in the industry, 21 years in the industry now?
Yeah.
What are some stories? You had to have seen some stories out there in the job site.
Yeah.
So walk me through that. What kind of things have you seen that maybe stuck out to you over the years?
Yeah. Yeah. That's 20 years is kind of a long time. So it's like going back and picking the specific ones.
You've been in the industry since the Spurs sucked.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
Yeah. No,
Frank and I are both huge Spurs fans, so I had to throw that in there.
Yeah. That's right.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I remember becoming a Spurs fan, and it probably started around 1999 when they were playing the Lakers in round 2 of the
swept them, by the way.
Yep, of the playoffs. That's right. And then I was living in Austin at the time, but I remember watching the game on a big screen at a bar, and then moving here, and then being totally into it when they won in 2003, the next time they won. But when I think back to, I've thought about the podcast and thinking about my time in the industry, the question could be asked like, what's the craziest thing that happened on a job site? But I actually think about a couple of different experiences on job sites that kind of stuck in my head. And, I don't know if they're really like specific to coding so much as they are more about people, contractors, getting a job done, and maybe the world outside the coatings industry not really thinking about the kind of the specifics that happen on a job site, and people don't really know a lot about sandblasting and coating. It's just not something, when you think about painting a water tank, you don't think about all that's involved to getting it done. But going back to 2008, there was a power plant that was built in Fairfield, Texas, I'm thinking it's Fairfield County, but maybe it's not. It's Fairfield, Texas, though. But this was a project for TXU, was the owner. And this power plant was started in 1975. And that's the year I was born. So it was a long time ago. And they had started this structure. They built the structure like a big Tinker toy, steel structure with just steel members. That was it. And it was up in the air, probably 10 stories high. And they were going to place boilers in it, but the project got called off, 40 years ago. And so you fast forward to 2000 and the early 2000s, and they decided that they were going to reconstruct this. They were going to bring this project back, and they were going to construct it. So it was quite an extensive coating project because the structure had been there for 35 years. The top coat, it was zinc primed, which has been known in the industry as a never have to be replaced, a permanent primer, never has to be removed. So, but the top coat had started to fade, and some of the mid had started to chip off because it's 40 years old. So this project entailed blasting this entire structure and then putting a single coat of a barrier protective, surface tolerant mastic primer, Carboline's Carbomastic 15. So when this project started, the company that was doing the painting, I think it was Mobley, they were hiring painters to come out and do this job. And so they hired all these guys, and they'd come out and they'd work for a week and they'd be done. And the challenge was these guys were working 300 feet up in the air, just sitting on a steel beam, straddling it, and having to blast. And they couldn't handle the height. It was scary for them. They couldn't work at the height. And so I remember being so like, wow, what a trip. You think I need a blaster to come out and work on this job site, and you pay him a good wage. I can't remember what the going wage was, maybe $12 an hour or something. And you think that you can get good guys to come out and work. But the trick for the contractor became, look, we're going to pay you $25 an hour or whatever the big wage was. But they weren't going to make the difference between 12 and 25 until they had been there for 3 weeks. And if they'd get $12 for the first 3 weeks per hour. And then after the third week, they were going to get the additional back pay on the 3 weeks they worked up to 25, and then they could continue to work for $25 an hour. But they weren't going to let them do that until they could prove that they could handle being a high guy. Mm-hmm. So that just kind of stuck in my mind. Just like how you get laborers to stick on a job and how you communicate to a team of people, hey, this is what it's going to entail, and this is what you need to be ready for and be committed to. So that's one.
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of cool.
No, that is pretty cool.
I
always thought about how they get people to do that. Mm-hmm. I would never do that. Mm-hmm. Of course, then again, if you work for 3 weeks at $12 an hour and you get 25 plus the back pay, exactly. It might, money talks, right? Yeah. That's what they say. Mm-hmm. That's a cool story. Yeah. Is there anything else you?
Yeah. So there's one other. I'm excited to tell that one too. So I'm like already talking fast about it, but we got probably the coolest paint project that a industrial paint manufacturer could have ever been involved in. We painted the Capitol, or we provided the paint for the Capitol of Texas in 2010. Mm-hmm. And that was a super cool project. Alpha Painting did that out of Round Rock, Texas. And it was for the State Preservation Board. And every week, part of the requirement of the job is, as the manufacturer, we had to walk the job site up on the scaffolded Capitol and take pictures and write a report weekly. And I remember, this is just a great learning lesson. I remember being on the scaffolding, and there's so many different trades going on. There's like the scaffold builders. There was certain things had to be replaced, like metal replacement, window replacement. So you had these different trades and painters. And I remember being up on the scaffolding one day, and a scaffold guy was picking up a tool or a pipe to add to the scaffolding, and one of the other workers of another trade reached to help the scaffold guy pick up the pipe. And right away, the superintendent for Alpha Painting said, "Not your trade." And you'd think, like, in this kind of helpful, uber helpful world we live in where, we want to help one another and teach our kids to help one another. It was a kind of, in that moment, the super looked at me and said, look, it's very important on this job site that if you are not part of that trade, you do not touch that stuff and you don't even talk to those guys. And the reason for that was for safety, because we're talking people working up above the Texas Capitol on scaffolding. Most people are tied off, but when you're walking from, one place to another up there was portions where you weren't tied off and you're just walking on the scaffolded walkways. And it just really stuck in my head that he suggested that is the rules. And so my takeaway was, learning how to do the job you do and focusing on that, there's a lot of value and benefit in that, and not doing anything else and not trying to be helpful with something else. Do your job well, and that is being helpful. So I thought that was a pretty cool takeaway from that particular job, among other things. But that was the kind of the lesson.
Yeah. Cool. So we're getting close to wrapping up here. I just have a couple more questions for you. One, where do you see SCP 5 years from now? Like, what are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? What are your goals with the San Antonio warehouse here? And kind of, just take me through what you want to get out of this company. And it's a very new company, but if you've even thought of that, I'm sure you have, because this is a passion of yours and it's it's your company.
My colleague, we have one employee besides myself. His name is Chris Anderson. He's our general manager and comptroller. And one of the things that he has reminded and kind of suggested is we don't need any more customers. And I think that could be taken the wrong way, but
that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it absolutely. And I think it speaks to, we want to do the best we can for the customers that we have. And so we have a healthy list of customers, and we have not been able at this point yet to provide all of the services that we provide to all of our customers. So I think that is really the immediate goal, I think, is to continue to endeavor towards that. And we've got all the facets right now that we need to be able to run the company optimally. We've got our product lines, we've got our warehouse space, and right now as a two-man show, we've got the right personnel, and then obviously we have you guys as contract help, and you guys do a fantastic job of running the warehouse, and that's working well. So I think operating and just continuing to focus on that is the immediate goal, and to utilize that, to utilize the capabilities that we have is what I'm meaning to say. I think looking out into the future, we don't want to lose sight of why we started this thing, and that was to represent with the most integrity and loyalty we have to our providers, to Carboline, to AER Equipment, to Marco. We want to be the best representative to our providers, and then we want to, as expeditiously and as competitively as we can, deliver our products to the customer base. So that's kind of a mission statement, I guess, if you will. So looking in 5 years down the road, maybe I know more what I don't want than what I do want. I don't want to be so big or so fast to grow that we lose sight of doing what we do well. I think that the tight group of customers that we serve, we feel that they believe we are a great resource and a great value to them. And so we want to continue that. I think looking down the road, though, there's a part of me that, two of the goals kind of are sustainability. We want to be able to sustain this business, and what does that take? And how do you do it long term? So that's one thing that's on my mind. And the other thing is that I have a bit of an obligation, and maybe it's brought on just by me personally. It's just maybe part of my wiring, but I love Carboline. I've been there for a long time. I believe in the management team that's running the organization. They've been good to me. They have a great outlook on their business, and I want SCP to continue to bring value to Carboline. I want to grow Carboline's business through SCP. And so I think we will take the moves that we need to take to fulfill that commitment. And I think on the sales side, I think that will mean bringing on more salespeople in time. And I think that's great for AER Equipment too. If we've got more people out in the market pushing product, then you guys will benefit from that as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it's hard to say exactly like from a dollar revenue size or personnel size, how big do we want to be in 5 years? But I would think we'd have more, some more people. And yeah, I think that's a pretty good answer.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're about to wrap up. I just want to say thanks for joining me on this, Frank. Before we leave, where can they reach you if they need to reach you?
Oh yeah, you can call our office line 210-930-4313. That's our landline here at Specialty Coating Products. We appreciate your business, your consideration.
All right, that's Frank Peterson, Director of Sales of Specialty Coating Products. We're signing off. Thanks for listening to the very first episode of the AER Podcast.
My life's a beat-up truck on an old dirt road. It's a crying in the rain. When the wind turns cold, it's an empty glass. And a love gone wrong, my life is just like a country song. It's like that first kiss when you're holding on tight. When two boys love one girl and you know they're gonna fight. It's these 18 wheels bring me home where I belong. My life's just like a country song.